Hello and welcome to our talk when we are going to cover how to manage identity in a multi-cloud journey. My name is Cyril Alcover and I'm working as an identity access management expert at RTT Federation. So no surprise, cloud deeply changes the way we manage security and changes the standard security boundaries. The loss of a physical perimeter in protecting sensitive data from cyber threats brings new challenges. At the same time, we see advanced attacks while we are moving more and more to the cloud in the digital transformation, right? So the question becomes quickly how to continue this digital transformation without compromising productivity or the user experience. To solve these issues, we see identity-centric approach being today the norm for many organizations operating not only in the cloud but in hybrid work environments. To build this identity-centric approach, conditional access based on risk scenario and context-based analysis become the foundation to build a modern zero-trust security architecture. So, for better understanding the challenges at stake when it comes to managing identity in the cloud, let's talk a bit about the context. First, cloud is complex. Cloud brings complexity in such scale that it can become rapidly very hard to know your assets and thus your attack surface. There are many relations between components or through API that are difficult to measure because it's outside of the corporate network, and that increases mechanically the number of potential blind spots in the organization. Looking at the IT landscape, hybrid environments is the rule since most of the companies don't have 100% asset in the cloud, neither on-premise, but both combined together. This means you have to deal with all solutions. At the same time, you are embracing cloud that requires different solution approaches from the identity standpoint. So we see more and more movement of, and this is also something which is very important, more movement of enterprise critical applications to the cloud that requires ever better security regarding IAM. Another key challenge when moving to the cloud is user productivity issues, especially since we expect more flexibility moving to the cloud and faster time to market, time to value also. Business line staff don't want the user to struggle with password resets. So if password is an issue, one radical idea is just to drop it. And this is what passwordless authentication is about, to avoid password fatigue that leads to poor user experience. In practical, this can be achieved thanks to a combination of a mobile phone in one hand and a fingerprint as a second factor in the other hand, for instance. And we move to another challenge, not a small one, operational efficiency. On-demand computing services become more and more prominent, thus cost administration are rising. So this is due most of the time to inefficient identity access management processes, probably automation and continuous improvement are keys, but requires an empirical approach involving regular communication with business lines to focus on most commonly visible and significant cases. Deep understanding of cloud identity services implementation would ensure robust security in the long run. The need to increase visibility of data breaches caused by compromised data and compromised identities leads us to the next challenge, the last one, which is compliance. So managing identities, relationship and access rights across a heterogeneous system makes it difficult to enforce the same security policy everywhere. So as we move in the cloud, it makes it more difficult to audit user access there. Our identity access management provides a unified view into security policy, along with auditing to ease compliance processes within the organization. So now we have seen the identity-driven approach become critical for agile business today. Let's focus on threats. What about the threats? Let's have a closer look. So most of the time, the security layers will prevent the major parts of threats. This usually works well, but despite these investments, we demonstrate that up to 5% of threats an organization is facing will bypass the security measures. So this small break in the wall can lead until cyber attacks, right? So some of them will be ransomware, other attacks will just be caused by service disruption or, since more recently, damage reputation or individual, while others are successful data breaches. According to Verizon 2020 Data Breach Investigations Report, over 80% of breaches classified as hacking involve brute force or the use of stolen credentials. So we can ask ourselves why the hackers are going after the credentials that efficiently. Answer is probably because the easiest way to get access is through users. Phishing continues to grow, especially on mobile, and it is still the most efficient way to get credentials. Many new techniques emerged once hacker has credentials of a single person. He can have an access and look for other privileges. So it is kind of snowball effect. So we need to face it. Most companies are still struggling to properly manage identity and access management today. Any attack, from the easiest to the most sophisticated one, comes with initial compromise, and you have different hackers' profiles, from activists to larger lucrative organizations and nations. Compromising the other is at the beginning of the kill chain. From that point, hacker can move laterally and exfiltrate data. Identity is one of the first steps to get in. If you monitor correctly, an attack won't be caused by a social engineering pitfall. So you need to audit and monitor in order to know where the open doors are. Especially with the work from home, employees are more likely to fall into social engineering and phishing scams than normal. Users also tend to lower attention around password security by reusing most of them on different sites, either personal or professional. And this results to stuffing attacks or capability to use a stolen password on a corporate application to see if it matches. Lateral movement and privilege escalation are also typically in the critical path of attacks. Even if you are protected against external attacks, you have many ways to be attacked from the inside, from the internal network. So the ransomware try to have the highest privilege access to encrypt the maximum device and put the alternate on their side for companies to pay the ransom. So as we see, attacks are getting more and more sophisticated, and those who still do not invest in identity and access management are exposed to it. So now let's see what are the solutions and devices to properly manage identity across multi-cloud. Here are a couple of key principles to have in mind. Training and awareness. In this field, no surprise. Users remain the weak points and regular pitfall. Every individual has a role. It can be a burden for some employees, but helpful for others. And people, governance, and communication are still important. And you have to put the monitoring in place to make sure that everything is working properly and as expected. For instance, by hunting for people that may fall into phishing attacks. It can be done in practical through an email from internal awareness campaign. And if you fall in the trap, you likely need to do an additional training. So again, awareness is key. Principle of least privilege. Once you understand that, you can provide an access much more dynamically only for the time frame required, for example, and you limit your exposure to risk. Architecting identity and access management for and from the cloud. This requires putting the cloud directory at the forefront, because it's becoming the central point of access today. Zero Trust Framework. This approach has never been so important than now. We need to think about how to make sure every component, can be users, can be applications or devices, that are connected to the organization is well identified in a more and more complex context. So beyond the concept, there are different security solutions that can be used. MFA for multi-factor authentication is a strong measure and must be on top of priorities if you not already cover it in your organization. MFA comes up as a solution easy to put in place. We are at a point where we have to say goodbye to password and make access much more difficult for hackers. The good news is that MFA is a far easier project than even before. So it's an easy move to secure the first layer and reduce the attack surface. So if you still don't have MFA for your workforce, you really should consider this as a big way to improve security quickly in a cost-effective approach. This has been rather well understood, especially when the work from home started. We have seen a huge spike in MFA enrollment in several countries and in several companies. So MFA solve not all the problem, of course. And we have seen hackers still using social engineering, as we said before, to get an access. But even if it's not perfect, it mitigates quite efficiently. RTT Federation is also something that can help. And as we've seen before, leaving entities silos in different cloud applications is not recommended. If the cloud application don't host passwords and delegate the access, then there is no risk of leaked credentials because they just don't know what the credentials are. So this is the best way to ensure that you're not impacted in case they are hacked. This is also a good solution for shadow IT to prevent having new identities out of control. For the record, credentials in the shadow IT can be the same as corporate credentials, so doing nothing can be risky anyway. Context-based authentication is also key to create risk-based scenarios, especially to find the right balance between user convenience and security by analyzing the whole context of authentication. Contextual awareness definitely helps to define the most relevant and appropriate access journey. Privilege and access management. Regarding privilege escalation, PAM with jump server and just-in-time access ensure relevant access, not like before when you had a generic password and access you never change. Access should be more dynamic, especially for the critical access like privileged accounts. User and entity behavior analytics tool to detect abnormal from normal with AI and machine learning. Such deviant behaviors can be hacked signals to identify preliminary behaviors to fraud. Monitoring tools are crucial to have an approach in the continuous way, not at once only. Breaking the silos across endpoints, network, devices, and applications, then centralizing the logs to get millions of events and determine the magnitude of threats is something powerful to adjust the risk for the risk score in shortened decision making. So this is also a step closer to the concept of continuous authentication to ensure access is not abused and to adjust the access model in real time. The outcome should be fed back to governance and provisioning tools to speed up reaction time to a given threat. And as a conclusion, we have to keep in mind that technology itself, even if very good, is not enough. Efficient identity program implementation cannot exist without governance and people. And this is very important. This is a usual pitfall for companies to drive identity program only through technologies. So governance is probably more difficult because you need to discuss and take decisions. And governance is also a lifetime job. People need to be at the top, otherwise people are changing and you finally end up with forgetting the rules and leave room for threats to come in. To finish, cloud can be seen as new threats, as we see, but when it comes to protect credentials and unwanted access coming from everywhere on the internet, this is really something we need to face. But in the other side, it can also be seen as an opportunity to embrace a modern identity model to get the maximum benefit from cloud and give to business line staff a powerful tool to fully support their activities in a secure and efficient way. Thank you for watching. If you want to continue the conversation, please don't hesitate to contact us.